outlined in the 2015 census. Nandyan po sa screen, Mr. President, which placed the 2nd District of Rizal as the top 2 most populous legislative district in the country with a population of 1,070,852. Sobra-sobra pa ho talaga, kaya kailangan ng hatiin. For San Mateo, the proposed 3rd district has a population of 252,527. Katatapos lang po yung census no nakaraang linggo, Mr. President. For Rodriguez, the 4th district has a population of 369,222. The 2nd district, yung po mga naiwan, will have a remaining population of 449,103. These numbers are only expected to surge in the latest survey currently being conducted by the PSA, which only affirms the pressing need for additional representation in the province of Rizal. May kasabihan po tayo, Mr. President, and this has been a tenet in several jurisdictions, that there is such a thing as vote dilution. Ang ibig sabihin po ng vote dilution, dapat po equal ang halaga ng boto ng bawat mamamayan kung saan man siya nakatira o bumoboto. As for the territory requirement, the 7 areas of Baras, Cardona, Halahala, Morong, Pililla, Tanayan, Teresa comprise as far as practicable contiguous, compact, and adjacent territory and are non-contiguous to the municipalities of San Mateo and Rodriguez. Ibig sabihin po, Mr. President, wala pong gerrymandering dito. I would like to emphasize that the province of Rizal supports the initiative. In fact, last year, the Sangguniang Panlalawigan approved a resolution number 332, series of 2019, requesting the House and the Senate to initiate the filing of the appropriate resolution or bill redistricting the present 2nd District of Rizal. It is my firm belief, Mr. President, that with this redistricting, the citizens of Rizal would improve the delivery, would acquire basic services, and would have an accelerated infrastructure and socioeconomic development. Lastly, the redistricting of San Mateo and Rodriguez, whose people were once migrants. Alam niyo po, Mr. President, ito po yung galing sa iba't ibang lugar sa Visayas and Mindanao na pumunta ng Metro Manila na naging migrants naman po sa Rizal. They were once migrants from different parts of the country in pursuit of a better life. Is a recognition of their historical struggle. It is only fit that we provide equal representation to these citizens. Lastly, I would like to recognize Senator Amy Marcos, who manifested her intention to become a co-author of this measure. I request your support for the prompt passage of this bill into law. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Senator Pangilinan, Mr. President.
Yes,
Leader, sir.
yes, with the permission of the sponsor and the majority leader, thank you, Mr. Senate President. May we know if the good sponsor would be willing to allow us to likewise sponsor the measure and co-author the same?
Willingly,
Because,
Mr. President, willingly.
Yes, thank you,
Willingly, Mr.
because
President.
just for the record, I grew up in Rizal from 1968 until today. We have property in Antipolo. It used to be Marikina. My brother-in-law, Gary, and my sister, Angeli, still live there. Diyan po kami lumaki. Yung area ng Masinag ay puro talahib pa ho yan at palayan. Ngayon ay masyado ng commercialized. So lumaki tayo sa Rizal, umuwi tayo dyan sa Antipolo for many years. And yung San Mateo, dyan po kinasal si Anthony at si Maricel, ang aking sister-in-law, at dyan ko nakilala si Sharon sa kasal ni Anthony at ni Maricel. Kaya pagka hindi ko sinuportahan itong redistricting na ito, makikinabang ang San Mateo, ay outside ako lang buko ako. So thank you, good sponsor, for allowing us to likewise co-sponsor the measure. We will submit a written co-sponsorship speech. And thank you for allowing us to be co-author of the same. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, distinguished sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'd like to recognize Senator Risa, Senator Dick Gordon, hopefully for short manifestation.
Senator Tiveros is recognized. Salamat po, Mr. President. And yes, good majority leader, just a brief manifestation for less romantic reasons than Senator Kiko, but also for personal reasons. Hilingin ko po sa good sponsor kung maaaring tanggapin din nila ako bilang co-author at co-sponsor nito. Dahil po, Senator Francis, yung unang-una ko pong trabaho ay sa Punta Halahala, Rizal. Naging community organizer po ako doon kasama ng isang farmer at fisher folk organization nung napaka-underdeveloped na munisipyo pa ang bayan ng Halahala. Hanggang ngayon na nasaksihan ko, umunlad talaga po sila at ang isang nakakatuwang bahagi ng kwentong iyon, yung pamilya nung isa sa mga samahan ng magsasaka na katrabaho ko noon ay nakapagbigay na recently ng isang mayor sa bayan ng Halahala. So bahagi po sila ng political at economic development ng Halahala sa buong lalawigan ng Rizal. So kung maaari po, good sponsor, ipagpapasalamat ko po iyon sa inyo. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Mr. President, willingly, Mr. President, to have a Senator Intiveros be a co-sponsor of this measure. And
Thank you
before
so much.
before the majority leader, allow me, nahihiya lang po ang majority leader, he learned his martial arts in Rizal. The majority leader. The rudiments of Arnis.
Hindi po. Actually, si Meliton Jeronimo was the former mayor of, if I'm not mistaken, Baras ba yun? Is the leader of the Sikaran martial arts. It's also a very popular martial arts of Rizal. So we also support being Arnis, also a fellow martial arts organization. Kaya sabi ko, malapit sa aming puso ang Rizal, Mr. President. So we fully support this measure as well, together with Senator Joel, Senator Ping. Sabi niya, when he was training in Rizal as a very young PNP officer.
Mr. President, unlike the majority leader, this representation and Senator Win has been a co-author and co-sponsor of this measure. So
Already.
already, Mr. President, in fact, we actively participated in the hearing, not only because we have also a lot of friends in Rizal province, and we would just like to put on record, insert for the record, our sponsorship speech together with Senator Gatchalian. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. At di ba sinabi mo kanina, nakabisita ka sa Avilon Zoo. Maganda po yung zoo dun, Avilon Zoo sa Rizal. So,
Senator Gordon, sir, nice.
Like to be part, if I will be allowed by the sponsor to be a co-sponsor. I've been in Rizal many, many times in terms especially of disasters. I just don't go there for elections, Mr. President. But you can see in some of the pictures here in Rodriguez and San Mateo, along with other municipalities as a part of the Red Cross, Mr. President. We have done an awful lot of things there that I always worry because there would be in a bind out there. For example, we have cleared buried roads there, Mr. President, with payloaders of the Red Cross, Mr. President. There's a picture, Your Honor, of the picture of the Red Cross payloaders that performed in Rodriguez and San Mateo. We did an awful lot of provision of food, water, and other life-saving operations. There's a water distribution there. I am one with the people, as pointed out by the sponsor. These are hardy people who came from Visayas and Mindanao, and along with the original residents of Rizal, they all work hard to try and make it happen, make ends meet, and that is why the Red Cross will always try to bring our payloaders there, because kung di natin naalisin kagad yung putik dyan, magkakaroon pa ng leptospirosis yung mga tao dyan sa lugar na yan. Kaya pagpatawad niyo po kung pagmamalaki ko lang yung mga ginagawa ng mga volunteers and staff ng Red Cross. Yan ay patunay na nagmamalasakit sa probinsya ng Rizal. Isang araw nasa Tanay kami kay Mayor Tanuatco. At ibang mga araw naman nasa Dalaitan doon sa Tanay at sa lahat ng paligid niyan, including Pililla, Rizal, andyan po tayo palagi. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I hope these two districts will add to the firmament of congressional districts that will be able to represent large numbers of population that they've been underrepresented. Ang dami-daming tao pero kulang ang representasyon. At certainly makakadagdag yan, makakapagpabilis ng mga dadating na mga gamit ng tao katulad ng karsada, katulad ng mga magagamit ng tao, education and everything. Thank you very much, Mr. President. For all those reasons, I heartily sponsor and support these measures.
Definitely, Mr. President, the good gentleman will be a co-sponsor, and history would show that one of the oldest chapters of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, Girl Scouts of the Philippines, and the Red Cross of the Philippines are the Rizal chapters, Mr. President.
That's correct.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to be made a co-sponsor. I just want to manifest that when I learned how to write your name and then your address, and I would always write Parañaque Rizal because I grew up in Rizal. And of course, Taguig was also a part of Rizal originally. So that is my simple request, Mr. President. Thank you.
Accepted,
So,
Mr.
Mr.
President.
President, myself as well, maybe that it wasn't placed on record earlier. So myself, the Senator from Taguig, Senator Pia Cayetano, we made co-sponsors as well as Senator Gatchalian, Joel Villanueva, Senator Lacson, and Senator Coco Pimentel, Mr. President, is raising his hand.
Majority Leader, Mr. President, please do not forget me because I'm the real neighbor of San Mateo and Montalban, Rizal.
Therefore, with that, Mr. President, we,
Yes.
to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, we move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration suspended.
These other two measures, Mr. President, there will be an omnibus speech for these two. And accordingly, Mr. President, wala nang tao sa gym nila. Nakauwi na daw po. Kasi nakakain na po.
And
Nakauwi na.
the FB streaming is not live.
Wala na, hindi na online daw, sabi nila po. So, sabi ni Senator Tolentino, lalo na sa Aurora, Mr. President, daw, mahirap daw yung ano doon. House Bill number 6333 and House Bill number
San Jose del Monte. Palawan Festival on the occasion of its Foundation Day on September 10, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9750. In the province of Aurora to commemorate the death anniversary of Doña Aurora Aragon Quezon.
With the Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms. Mr. President, to report formally and faithfully Jose del Monte, Bulacan, and House Bill 5944, the death anniversary of Doña Aurora Aragon Quezon. Seven and 156, Mr. President, without amendments. And I request, Mr. President, that my sponsorship speech, though I will quote in part, be inserted into the records to abbreviate the proceedings of this chamber. But Mr. President, allow me to show a 1-minute video presentation. The first video presentation would festival, Mr. President, has been Landers to win the Guinness Book World of Records. 2019, the city of San Jose bagged the record for the most living figurines in a TV scene this past season. Ito po yung video ng Tanglawan, Mr. President. Nanonood po, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me direct your attention to a second video. This is the video of the province of Aurora, where one of our members is a resident, Senator Sani Angara. Can we have that video, please? The Aurora video. Can we have the Aurora video? This is also a bill that seeks to declare a special working holiday to honor Doña Aurora. Official First Lady. She was one of those who campaigned for women's right to suffrage in the Philippines, and together with her daughters, they served as nurses of the Red Cross. She was ambushed in 1947 in Bungabon, Nueva Ecija. This is the flag of the
nang ang may bahay ng dating presidente Manuel L. Quezon na si Aurora Aragon Quezon, kanyang anak na babae na si Maria Aurora, manugang na si Philip Buen Camino, mayor ng Quezon City na si Ponciano Belmonte, at siyang pang ibang kasama
President Quezon, Mr. President.
pamamagitan ng ambush ng Hook Balahap nang ang delegado ay patungo sa border ng Nueva Ecija at Tayabas Baler. Ang pangyayari ay kinagimbal ng mamamayan ng Pilipinas. Aurora ang nagpasinaya ng historical marker sa Bungabon, Nueva Ecija kung saan naganap ang pamamaslang.
The landscape of Aurora will change.
Mr. President,
Yung Boracay
the
of
Senate
Aurora,
President is there. Senate President Soto is seated.
be not afraid, Aurora. Ganyan po yung kaunlaran. Ang kailangan po hindi magbago ay ang tao ng Aurora. Hospitable pa rin kayo.
So, Mr. President, with your indulgence, I request that my entire speech, sponsorship speech, be inserted as part of the records of these proceedings, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President, and I seek the support of our colleagues for the passage of these two measures, which would improve travel and tourism after the COVID pandemic in those two localities in Bulacan and the province of Aurora. Maraming salamat po at maligayang Pasko, Mr. President.
Being a co-author and co-sponsor of the two measures, Mr. President, may I just be allowed to co-sponsor, give my co-sponsorship speech colleagues. It is my honor and great pleasure to co-sponsor this celebration of the Tanglawan Festival on the occasion of its Foundation Day on September 10, amending for the purpose RA number 9750. Bilang isang true-blooded Bulakenyo, Ginoong Pangulo, lubos po ang ating pagsuporta sa panukalang batas na ito dahil alam po natin na napakahalaga nito sa ating mga kababayan sa San Jose del Monte. At binabati natin ang ating chairperson, Senator Francis Tolentino, sa pagsusulong ng panukalang batas na ito. Binabati din natin si Mayor Art Robes at si Congresswoman Rida Robes Congresswoman Rida Robes, Ginoong Pangulo, ay second cousin of this representation, and we admire their leadership at ang mga ginagawa po nila doon po sa San Jose del Monte. Importante po isang bayan dahil pinatatatag nito ang ugnayan ng lahat ng mga mamamayan, lalong-lalo na po at nangunguna ang San Jose del Monte sa may pinakamaraming barangay at pinakamalaking populasyon sa buong lalawigan ng Bulacan. Meron po silang 59 barangays at tinatayang 574,000 ang population. At alam na alam din po yan ni Senator Mig Zubiri at Senator Win Gatchalian. Mas mapapalalim din po ang paggunit ng Tanglawan Festival na inilunsad po noong taong 2016. Simbolismo po ang tanglaw o ilaw sa direksyong tinatahak ngayon ng ating mga kababayan doon tungo sa pagiging isang sustainable at premier city. Ginoong Pangulo, nararapat din po na gawing special non-working holiday ang September 10 sa naturang syudad, lalo na po para sa mga manggagawa na nasa kaibuturan po ng kultura ng mga taga San Jose del Monte, lalo sapagkat ang kanilang kinikilalang patron ay si San Jose ay pinaniniwalaang isa ring manggagawa. Muli po, congratulations sa ating Committee on Local Government at maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, and may God bless us all.
Okay. Mr. President.
Gordon, Mr. President, yes, Senator Gordon, Mr. President, and afterwards Senator Villar.
Thank you.
Senator Gordon.
Co-sponsoring this proposal or just a brief a manifestation. San Jose del Monte used to be Sapang Palay, Mr. President. Ito nagpapakita na sumabog talaga ang populasyon natin. At nung araw talaga yung mga kapuspalad ng mga kababayan natin dyan nilalagay nung araw. At hindi ko akalain na talagang sumabog yung populasyon niya na ngayon ay isa sa pinakamalaking syudad, number 18 sa buong Pilipinas, ang population nitong San Jose del Monte, Mr. President. Can you imagine, Mr. President, it's now for the first first-class, highly urbanized city in the province of Bulacan and Central Luzon. Kaya ngayon, magdadating na rin yung mga mass transit dyan at saka mapapalapit lalo sa Pilipinas, sa main center. Yan, it is what we've been talking about na yung urban sprawl of providing opportunities doon sa mga nakakarating po na dapat umabot ang pagkakataon na magkaroon ng mga bahay ang mga tao na sarili nila na hindi sila nakatira sa mga dampa at talagang meron na silang sariling paaralan. Ito ang triumph ng bayan ng San Jose del Monte under their local officials headed by Mayor Robe and Congresswoman Robe. Ang isa lang gustong magsalita rito ng konti, Mr. President, is because tatayo na kami dyan ng Red Cross branch and blood bank at this coming year, Mr. President. Kaya tuwan-tuwa ako na maraming tumutulong sa atin dyan. May nagbigay ng lupa sa amin, pati si Congresswoman Robe, nagbibigay ng lupa sa amin. Pero meron akong kaibigan, si Tess Rodriguez, na magbibigay ng lupa sa Red Cross dyan para sa blood bank at saka yung tinatawag nating branch ng Red Cross. Baka maging sariling chapter yan. On the other hand, Mr. President, I cannot remain quiet as we honor the late Doña Aurora Aragon Quezon, the wife of President Manuel Quezon, the first lady. Unfortunately, we remember her for being ambushed. Inambush siya ng mga tigalabas, kung tawagin namin ng araw sa Central Luzon. Yung tinatawag natin hukbalhap. At again, another story na hindi natapos sapagkat hindi natin nalaman eventually na kung sino talaga ang nagpapaslang sa kanya. Ang nalalaman lang natin ay si Luis Taruk nung araw at yung mga Taruk ay hindi siya gagalawin, yun ang sinasabi dahil meron silang relasyon na pagkakaibiganan nitong si Doña Aurora Quezon. But the more poignant part of it is that a lot of people are not aware that Doña Aurora Quezon was the first president of the chairman of the Philippine, at that time, National Red Cross. Na tinindig nung araw noong 1947, September 27, I'm sorry, April 15, 1947, inaugurahan yan sa Malacanang grounds ni President Rojas. At from that point on, lumaki na lumaki ang Philippine Red Cross. Kaya kahapon lang nabigay kami ng Doña Aragon, Aurora Aragon Awards doon sa mga tumutulong sa amin sa earthquake nito nakaraang taon sa Batangas at saka dito sa nangyaring sa COVID at saka dito sa mga bagyo na inaabot natin. And from that time on, the Red Cross, your Red Cross has become the Philippine Red Cross when we changed the name para hindi mapagkamalan na gobyerno yan. Hindi kami gobyerno dahil yan ang nasa fundamental principles. At parang narinig ko at nakikita ko, nasa opisina ko yung certificate na talagang nagpapatunay na ginawa at na-inaugurahan yung Red Cross sa Pilipinas sa paghintulot ng International Red Cross Community. And President Aurora Aragon Quezon, Chairman Aurora Aragon Quezon was our first president. And that's why we honor those who win medals in the Red Cross the first time with the Doña Aurora Aragon Quezon. I congratulate our good friend, Senator Tolentino. His bills today are quite worthwhile, are certainly magpapalawak ng pagkakataon ng mamamayan. Nakakabalik lingon tayo sa ating nakaraan at mapapatunay na tayo ay alam kung saan tayo paroroon. Katulad nitong San Jose del Monte, Ram sinasabi derisively nung araw, diyan tinatapon di umano yung mga kababayan natin mahihirap ay ngayon ay highly urbanized city. So that shows na pwede tayo mag-triumph sa kabila ng kahirapan dito sa ating bansa. At yan nga, yan si Doña Aurora Quezon. Ayun lang, about an hour ago, I spoke before the Asia Pacific Red Cross group. Andun ang presidente ng chairman ng Red Cross si Francesco Roca at saka yung Secretary General na si Jagan Chapagan ay pinupuri na ang Philippine Red Cross, its history, and all the volunteers and staff that have done well. Just want to point out also, Mr. President, extra na lang ito, nasa island of Panay, nagkaroon na ngayon tayo ng tinatawag na bukod sa warehouse and logistics complex, nagkaroon na po ngayon ng molecular laboratory, nasa gitna ng Panayan, at saka yung sa Surigao ay nagkaroon na rin po ng molecular laboratory doon. Hinihintay ko na lang ilabas ng Department of Health yung ating permit to operate. So, Mr. President, I congratulate Senator Tolentino. I congratulate the whole Senate because we know how to look back at our past so we can chart a better future ahead as we honor the people who made the difference in the lives of our people like Doña Aurora Aragon Quezon. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Villar is recognized.
I want to manifest that I want to be a co-sponsor of this House Bill 6333 or an act commemorating the cityhood of San Jose del Monte, province of Bulacan, through the annual celebration of the Tanglawan Festival. I'm doing this because my husband, former Senator Manny Villar, is an adopted son of San Jose del Monte City because he is one of the biggest investor in San Jose del Monte City. And at the same time, I operate a farm school in San Jose del Monte City, catering to the central and northern Luzon. So maybe the good chairman will make me a co-sponsor of this house, of this bill. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Senator Villar. I can attest to that, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I can also be made co-sponsor of the said measures, the one of Bulacan, because I've also
You also have a house in Bulacan?
No, sir. But I'm a close personal friend of Congresswoman Rita Robes and
Yes.
Mayor Robes. I visited there with Senator Nancy Binay. We were together. Is the home of our dear seatmate, Senator
Senator Angara.
Angara, and the father was my mentor, Mr. President, one of my mentors, Senator Edgardo Angara. So, with the permission of the sponsor, if we can be made co-sponsor. Thank you, Mr.
Definitely,
President.
Mr. President.
With that,
Okay,
Mr. President,
take note of that.
yeah, to allow us to study the measure further, and by tradition, we would like to pass it today, but by tradition, we cannot pass measures on the same day. We move to suspend consideration of the same.
Okay, is there any objection? Chair hears none. The motion of the majority leader is carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a bit of housekeeping before we take up some sponsorship. Senator Bongo would like to be included as a member of the BICAM for the COCO levy measure, Mr. President. So, yes,
Okay, we
okay lang.
take note of that. I can see the Senate President signing approved sign.
Thumbs up. Therefore, it's no
So-
objection.
Therefore, hearing no objection, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And continuing the sponsorship, we have three measures, Mr. President. So we'd like to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order, Senate Bill number 1886. I so move, Mr. President.
Objection, chair hears none, motion's carried.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The secretary is
And move to
directed
consider to read the title of the measure.
to read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill 1886. An act further expanding the jurisdiction of the Metropolitan Trial Courts, municipal trial courts in the cities, municipal trial courts, and municipal circuit trial courts, amending for the purpose Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Reorganization Act of 1980 as amended.
President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon, to sponsor the measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon?
This sounds really very simple, but it's a very important bill nonetheless. Simply because as part of our continuing effort in the Committee on Justice, your Committee on Justice has taken it upon itself through the Senate that we unclog the tight and overloaded courts dockets, Mr. President. Nakita nyo na noong nakaraan, meron tayong community service in exchange for those first offenders hanggang aresto mayor para mabawasan. At saka nagdagdag pa ho tayo ng 500 na judges at large at tuloy-tuloy po ang ating mga ginagawa, hindi lang dyan, ngunit sa mga bilis na napag-usapan na natin katulad ng kukulong yung mga separate facilities for those who are guilty of heinous crimes. Mr. President, justice delayed is justice denied. That sounds very tart. It's because in the Constitution, Section 16 of our Constitution, all persons shall have the right to a speedy disposition of their cases before all judicial, quasi-judicial, or administrative bodies. This is part of the Bill of Rights. Now, Mr. President, when we look at the situation in the courts, and I sit, as you know, in the Judicial Bar Council. The Chief Justices of the Supreme Court has always asked for our help to help them ease the pain of overloaded dockets. This is one of them, Mr. President. Right now, reported that in December 2017, the first level courts, in a matter of civil cases, they had about 19,832 cases. In the year 2018, there was an inflow of 47,442 civil cases and an outflow of 45,457 civil cases. By the end of 2018, the number of civil cases pending with the first level courts was pegged at 21,169. With regard to the second level courts, in December 2017, there were 117,785 civil cases pending. Napakalawak po at napakalaki. By the end of 2018, the number of civil cases pending with the second level courts was 108,484. Based on this data, this shows that our first level courts have a lower number of pending civil cases at the end of the year compared to that of our second level courts. To help declog, bawasan ang mga docket ng second level courts, which are the RTCs, the regional trial courts, and to equalize the burden between the first level courts and the second level courts, this bill proposes to expand the jurisdictional threshold of our first level courts, yung mga municipal trial courts at saka yung mga metropolitan trial courts. Under Senate Bill number 1886, we're proposing that the first level courts will have jurisdiction over civil actions involving Title II or possession of real property or any interest therein where the assessed value of the property does not exceed 400,000 pesos. Then also in the case of admiralty and maritime actions where the demand or claim does not exceed 2 million pesos. And then civil actions and probate proceedings, testate and intestate, where the value of the personal property, estate, or amount of the demand does not exceed 2 million pesos. Then a procedure provision on periodic indexation in Section 3, which provides that 5 years from the effectivity of this act and every 5 years thereafter, the jurisdictional amounts mentioned in Section 19, subsection 2, subsection 3, subsection 4, subsection 8, and section 33, subsection 1, subsection 3, and subsection 4, Batas Pambasa, bilang 129 as amended by this act, shall be increased by 100,000 pesos. Batas Pambasa bilang 129 was approved last August 1981, or almost 40 years ago. Since 1981, there has only been one amendment to this law, or Republic Act number 7691 of 1994, which provides for the present jurisdictional amount of first and second level courts. A survey was conducted by the Office of the Court Administrator recently and on civil cases filed in 2019, including 342 RTCs from all over the country. Now, these are the results, Mr. President. 90% of these cases involve amounts not exceeding 2 million. Mababa. Of the 5,354 cases filed involving civil actions, probate proceedings, and admiralty and maritime proceedings, 4,792 cases which would have gone to the first level courts with the proposed amendment to BP 129. Yun sana ang pupuntahan. 76% of these cases involve property with assessed values not exceeding 400,000 pesos. Of the 2,540 civil cases filed involving Title II or possession of real property, 1,922 cases would have gone to the first level courts with the amendment of BP 129, this bill, Mr. President. Thus, further amendments to BP 129 is very timely as the values indicated therein as amended is already impractical and outmoded. Now, Mr. President, the 2019 Global Competitiveness Report published by the World Economic Forum provides for the Global Competitiveness Index 4.0, which measures the national competitiveness of countries. National competitiveness is defined as the set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of a country. According to this report, the Philippines ranked 109 out of 141 countries for the criteria on efficiency of legal framework in settling disputes. Napakababa natin, Mr. President. The efficiency of legal framework in settling disputes is a response to the survey question, in your country, how efficient are the legal and judicial systems for companies in settling disputes? With 1 being extremely inefficient and 7 being extremely efficient, the Philippines scored a measly 3.0, Mr. President. So, napakababa na naman. Given this, with the proposed expansion of the jurisdiction of our first level courts, we would not just help with the declogging of our second level courts and the speedy disposition of cases, but also help improve our ranking in global competitiveness. Nay, Your Honor, not just improve our ranking in global competitiveness, it will indicate that we are doing something right, which hopefully will attract foreign investments sa kailangan natin para makapagtrabaho at magkaroon ng pagkakataon ang ating mga kapuspalad ng mga mamamayan. With the increase in the jurisdictional threshold of the first level courts, civil cases will be better distributed between the first and second level courts. Cases will now be resolved in a more efficient and faster rate. Our current justice system is slow. In fact, I say it's slow as molasses. Bakit nga naman bigat ng binubuhat nila So talaga lumalabas. Hindi nasusunod yung sinasabi sa ating Bill of Rights on a speedy trial. With the introduction of the proposed amendments, we hope that we shall not just help with the speediness of the resolution of cases, but also will help our judges to declog their courts. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I pray for the support of the colleagues in this Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Requested Senator Coco Pimentel if we can do ladies first. And therefore, Mr. President, I move that we transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order Senate Bill number 1934, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1934.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion's carried.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the motion?
Okay.
Senate Bill 1934, an act prohibiting discrimination, marginalization, and violence committed on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and sex characteristics, and providing sanctions therefore.
May we recognize, Mr. President, our dear colleague, distinguished colleague, Chairperson of the Committee on Women and Children, no other than Senator Risa Ontiveros.
We recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Marami pong salamat, Mr. President. O daghang salamat kaayo, Majority Leader. Magandang gabi po, Mr. President, mga minamahal kong mga kasama. As we are about to close this challenging year, I'm honored to present again to the plenary a piece of legislation so dear to my heart. A bill which has become a battle cry of our younger generation, searching for validation and acceptance. A long-standing plea of advocates and allies who have been begging these halls to listen and take a stand. A beacon of hope for Filipino parents who just want to see their children grow up without fear of stigma and discrimination. A bill that echoes the words of Pope Francis, quote, "If someone is gay and searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" Close quote. Mula pa 11th Congress ang panukalang batas na ito at nasagot na ng higit 2 dekada ang pakikibaka, ang halos lahat ng agam-agam natin tungkol dito. Humihingi ba ito ng special rights? Lahat ng tao ay may sexual orientation at gender identity or expression. Lahat tayo ay kasamang mapoprotektahan ng batas na ito. Ang sinasabi lesbiana, bisexual, transgender o queer, lahat tayo ay may ambag sa lipunan. Lahat tayo ay pantay-pantay. Matatapakan ba nito ang karapatan nating magulang sa pagpapalaki ng ating mga anak? Mr. President, my dear colleagues, mga magulang rin tayo. Hindi ba't mas nais natin makita ang ating mga anak sa isang lipunang hindi mapanghusga? Na kung anuman ang nais nilang pasuking propesyon o trabaho ay walang magsasabing, "Hindi kami tumatanggap ng bakla." Na kung anuman ang dito, na kaya nilang makamit ang ating mga anak ng kanilang mga pangarap at anumang hangarin na walang magsasabing, "Anak, hanggang dito ka lang." Lalabagin ba ng batas na ito ang prinsipyo ng religious freedom? Hindi dapat mangamba tayong mga relihiyoso because this proposed legislation will govern matters of the state. Hindi nito babaguhin ang paniniwala ng simbahan o ang mga turo ng Biblia. Quote, "LGBTQ people are children of God." Close quote. Tayo pa bang mga relihiyoso ang magsasara ng ating mga puso at isipan? Hindi ba't compassion at kindness ang mga pangunahing tinuturo ng mga simbahan? Isn't passing the SOGI Equality Bill a Christian thing to do? Mr. President, my dear colleagues, 11th Congress pa ang bill na ito. Panahon pa ni former Akabayan Congresswoman Eta Rosales at ng late great Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. Pagkatapos ng 20 taon, maaari na nating isantabi ang ating mga pangamba. This 18th Congress, our challenge, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, is to be an ally. As and opportunities for the members where they are represented in all aspects of civic life. As allies, we should be lifting up their voices, making sure they are heard loud and clear. As allies, we should stand up alongside them in the fight for their basic rights. As allies, we should listen, understand, and accept. Thank you to my colleagues who signed the committee report for this bill. Senator Nancy, Senator Amy, Senator Grace, Senator Laila, Senator. Thank you for expressing your support for this bill. Thank you for choosing to be allies. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, let us rise up to the challenge. May the 18th Congress be the Congress that will finally put this bill to a vote. May we be known as the legislator allies who stood up against discrimination and fought for equality. Today, ang unang araw ng simbang gabi, this Christmas season, as we celebrate the Holy Family and the birth of the little Lord Jesus, let us take time to remember all those who were told there is no place at the inn. Let us be their shepherds and their angels, as we should always be for the least, the lost, and the last. May Jesus' birth, the birth of a true change maker and a true champion for equality, move us to act in ways reflective of His goodness. At mga kasama, sa kabila ng lahat, parating ang Pasko, kaya maligayang Pasko at bagong taong puno ng pag-asa at kalusugan. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much to our dear colleague. And to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, I move to suspend consideration of the same.
Any motion's carried.
Gutom na po ang ating presiding officer. So that's the last but not the least measure, Mr. President. But before we take this up, Senator Dito Lapid wants to be made a co-sponsor of Senate Bill number 1886, Mr. President. He'll submit his co-sponsorship speech to the Secretariat and insert it to the records.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
For the record.
So inserted.
Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to special order, Senate Bill number 1840. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion's carried.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1840 and ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill 1840, an act amending Republic Act number 8762, otherwise known as the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000, by lowering the required paid-up capital for foreign retail enterprises and for other purposes.
Mr. President, may I recognize the sponsor, the distinguished chair of the Committee on Trade and Commerce, no other than Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
Senator Pimentel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and my esteemed colleagues, our guests, ladies and gentlemen, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Retailing is truly a catalyst in our quest for economic growth. It accounts for about 23% of the Philippines' total services industry and has been a major growth driver in the services sector for years, having a total gross value added amount of 1.22 trillion pesos in 2018 from only 686.3 billion pesos in 2009. Its share in our total GDP averaged 13.8% in 2015 to 2019. In the year 2000, Republic Act number 8762, or the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000, was signed into law, allowing the entry of foreign investments in the Philippine retail industry. This is with the end goals of spurring economic growth, promoting competition by providing better products and services to consumers, and creating more job opportunities for Filipinos. Despite the existence of the law, however, only a few foreign retailer firms have invested in the Philippine retail industry. As of December 2020, there were only 50 pre-qualified foreign retailers in the country. This is only about 2 investors per year since the law has been passed. In 2016, the Philippines received only $101 million in the foreign retail sector investments as compared to its neighboring countries which received billions. Thailand received $3.2 billion. Malaysia received $2.5 billion, while Indonesia and Vietnam received $2 billion each in retail sector investment. Singapore, despite being a geographically small country, received over $8 billion in foreign retail sector investments, almost more than all other ASEAN economies combined. It is clear, therefore, that the original intent of our law has not been met over the years. At present, as we are faced with the pandemic, the government must find ways to stimulate the economy and help the hardest hit sectors to recover. A recent survey made by the Asian Development Bank on the impact of COVID-19 on businesses found that wholesale and retail trade was one of the most affected sectors by the implementation of the enhanced community quarantine, with 21.8% temporary closures and 25.9% permanent closures. Sales in this sector fell by about 80.8% since March 2020. Hence, there is a need for more investments that can hopefully boost and rebuild our retail industry. Since the Philippines is still lagging behind retail investments, the existing law should be amended to further open up the economy, but at the same time protect the Filipino retailers. Your committee took extra effort to consult our sari-sari store owners through their national association. To further liberalize the retail trade industry, the Committee on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship proposes Committee Report number 115, or an act amending Republic Act number 8762, otherwise known as the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000, by lowering the required paid-up capital for foreign retail enterprises and for other purposes. This bill seeks to encourage foreign investments by removing the classifications which set the paid-up capital requirement to as high as $2,500,000, bringing down required paid-up capital of foreign-owned partnerships, corporations, and single proprietorships to a standard amount of $300,000. Foreign investors are required to maintain in the Philippines at all times the full amount of the prescribed minimum capital to protect the industry from fly-by-night foreign retailers. Explicitly covered under this act to address the issues of foreigners illegally doing business through different online platforms without registration and payment of taxes. For ease of doing business, the brainchild of our majority leader, the pre-qualification requirements that a foreign retailer should have been engaged in retailing for the past 5 years and should have at least 5 retailing branches anywhere in the world, embodied in the current implementing rules and regulations, were also removed. Despite this, we retained the reciprocity requirement mandating that the foreign retailer's country of origin must also allow the entry of Filipino retailers before we can accept them in our country. Lastly, to protect our MSMEs, we provided for a per store capital requirement of $150,000 for foreign retailers who wish small enterprises. It is the policy of the state to promote consumer welfare by attracting productive investments that will bring down the costs of products for Filipino consumers and will create a competitive retail environment that encourages innovation. It is with such commitment that approval of this bill is earnestly sought. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I would like to seek your full support for the immediate passage of this bill. Consumer spending, which accounts for 66% of the GDP, is a key economic driver for growth. I believe that through this initiative, additional capital will be infused into our economy and jobs will be created, helping us recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Maraming salamat po.
President, upon the former Senate President Coco Pimentel, I will just deliver my co-sponsorship speech when we resume this next year, January.
Thank you. We thank the good gentleman from Valenzuela for that, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move to suspend consideration of the measure to allow our colleagues to study. Thank you, Mr. President. There are no other items on the agenda.
This is just a manifestation and an update for our colleagues and the members of the business sector who have reached out to me on the status of CREATE. Dear colleagues, you will recall that the Senate tackled CREATE on a daily basis with the support of the Senate President. The Majority Floor Leader, Senator Zubiri, cleared the schedule on the floor for roughly 3 weeks for daily tackling of the CREATE bill. But because we had to go into the national budget, we had to suspend deliberations on every subject, on every bill, and again, so on 26th of November 2020, the Senate passed the CREATE bill on second and third and final reading. And on the same day, the Senate received word that the Senate version would be adopted by the House of Representatives. But 2 weeks after the passage of the bill in the upper chamber, there was no further word on this, and we did not receive any official action from the House. On Monday, this Monday, December 14, a news report came out about the House conference members, and then there was an official letter to that effect received by the Senate yesterday, indicating that in fact they have designated members for the bicameral conference with the intention of holding a bicameral conference. Of CREATE this year is a huge setback, precisely why we had daily deliberations to the extent of setting aside other very important bills, is because we recognize the importance of this bill, particularly for the MSMEs and the business sector. It will be noted that the CREATE version of the Senate immediately lowers the corporate income tax from 30 to 25%. Immediately, Mr. President. If you would compare this to the House version, their version is only a lowering of the corporate income tax by 1% every year. Further, for MSMEs, if their earning is less than 5 million pesos, they would only be paying 20% corporate tax. I know that many of our colleagues had concerns and we deliberated for long hours, but in the end, I believe that we were all excited about this measure, and the Majority Floor Leader is nodding his head because he even stood up here and gave a very personal and impassioned he shared his story about being a medium-sized business and not receiving any incentive whatsoever, which brings me to the second part of CREATE. The second part of CREATE, Mr. President, is the incentive portion. And I'd like to put on record that the Senate worked very carefully. I'd like to thank all our colleagues. There was even a news article that said ito yung early na pamasko ng senators para sa mga taong bayan. I'd like to point out that the reason the incentive portion was so important is because we wanted to plug the leakages and we wanted accountability. There is roughly 400 billion pesos last recorded, I believe that was 2017, unaccounted for incentives that are being given away. So I just want to say that the importance of this measure was simply for accountability and transparency. These are incentives that otherwise would have been tax collections by the government. And that's why I mentioned MSMEs kasi wala silang incentive. They pay taxes. So if we will incentivize a business and say you are entitled not to pay taxes, you will get incentives. All the bills seek to do is to ensure that there is accountability, that there is the FIRB that will ensure that nalalagay sa tama itong incentives and that the commitment of those companies would be delivered, commitments to create jobs, etc., etc. So on that note, Mr. President, we came up with a package that I believe was really well thought of. There's a 10-year transition period for companies that are currently receiving incentives, much longer than the version of the House, even longer than the original version of the Senate. And then when they apply for new applicants or those who will reapply, also very generous provisions, Mr. President. So on that note, that is my report to our colleagues that on that note, I'm sad to say that there will be no immediate decrease in the corporate income tax. There will be no rationalization and certainty. What the businessmen had asked us is certainty so that when the new year starts, they know kung anong papasukan nilang negosyo. Unfortunately, this will not happen, not because of the Senate though, Mr. President. I thank our colleagues and I thank the Senate President once again for his leadership in helping us pass this measure on our part. But that is as far as we can go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Senator Cayetano, Mr. President.
Yes, the majority leader.
Thank you. Just a bit of housekeeping. I move to transfer from the Committee on Rules to the Committee on Basic Education as primary committee and Committee on Finance as the secondary committee the following bills. Senate Bill number 1610 and Senate Bill 1660. The House counterparts of these bills, Mr. President, these are local bills, have already been transferred to the Senate. So,
All right, hearing no objections, so noted, made on record.
thank you, Mr. President. Before I adjourn, I'd just like to again greet our secretariat, all the employees of the senators, all the senators, a Merry Christmas. I know it's a bleak Christmas, Mr. President, because of the pandemic. Please stay safe and healthy. We'd like to appeal to our staff, our members to be very careful, still going out. I know there's coronavirus fatigue, but like in the United States and in Europe where they're surging now, I hope we do not surge as well in the infections of coronavirus, Mr. President. But you know what saddens me most, my dear colleagues, is that we will not be able to spend, for the first time in a long time, our Christmas party together face to face. Last year, we had a costume party and it was so much fun. Coronavirus, I hope that one day the pandemic is over, Mr. President, and we can once again celebrate with us the very people that day in, day out make our work so much easier for us, Mr. President. I always say I'm only as good as my team, and we'd like to thank all of them and greet everyone. And my dear colleagues, especially the minority floor leader, because he always remembers me. A Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and to all our colleagues. Merry Christmas, sir. To the Senate President, Merry Christmas. Mr. President, I'd just like to remind our colleagues that before we adjourn, we have a continuing Senate resolution, resolution number 15, entitled Resolution Authorizing All Regular Standing Committees and Special Committees of the Senate to conduct hearings, meetings, and consultations during the recess of the Senate for continuity in the process of passing pending proposals.
If you noticed, all of you were asked for a video message by the Senate employees, no? And we all made one. They are having some kind of a virtual Christmas party, and they will play all your messages
Yeah.
that in that occasion that they will do. I think they're doing it tomorrow night, virtually, of course.
That's good, that's good. Oh, well, we'll do this virtually, Mr. President, so that everybody's alive, and then next year we celebrate when everyone is vaccinated. Hopefully by Senator Rutherford, because he's the vaccine man. So with that, Mr. President, I am honored to move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, January 18th, 2021.
Are you not going to remind our colleagues about Senate resolution?
I said it na po.
Ah,
Senate
okay.
Resolution 50.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. What is your motion?
My motion, Mr. President, is to adjourn until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, January 18, 2021, and a Happy New Year to everyone as well.
Blessed Christmas to all.
Monday,
Everyone.
January 18, 2021.
Director for you.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I will not ask next year the question, where is the